Welcome, Borough President Adams.
Thank you. How are you doing? How's all of you doing? Good to see you.
We got a good crowd tonight.
That's a good thing.
Let me just give you a slight intro here. Eric Adams has been a police officer, rose to the rank of captain in the NYPD. He's a founder of 1,000 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care. State senator from Brooklyn for 2 terms, yeah?
Four terms.
4 terms, right. Those terms are shorter, right?
Yes.
And borough president since 2013. I'm coming to you from Greenpoint. He's my borough president. And now candidate for mayor. Borough president, you've said a lot about what and you have a history with this too, talking about putting in protected bike lanes faster, getting protected bike lanes to the whole city. Do you want to spotlight some of your sort of policy points, policy priorities for us, just as a way to kick off here?
No, thank you. And, sometimes I often say that people don't realize the long record of advocacy on these important issues. I go all the way back to Eric when he had the street packs. And there's a video out pushing, back when my freshman time as a senator, pushing to slow driving speeds in the city, to decrease the speed to 25 miles an hour. Our advocacy around expansion of bike programs throughout our entire city, the advocacy around being named as Street Blog's elected official of the year for being a strong voice for safer streets and better transit. The amazing program, what we put in place over at Prospect Park, where we have a protected bike lane. It took years of advocacy, and we were able to get it done by bringing together community board and organizations. There was a fight with the previous borough president on Prospect Park West. There was advocacy on my part, bike to work days. But when I advocate for biking, it's not because I'm speaking for the residents of the city. I am the residents of the city. I ride my bike. I ride it often. I find it therapeutic. I find it a good way of transportation. And I know those from Transportation Alternative. I'm not a stranger to them. And I know the importance of having a safe way of moving around the city on bikes. We can do more safe routes for children to ride to and from school. We deal with obesity, exercise, and great alternative in transportation. We should extend our protected bike paths. And I just think that it is something that I'm aligned with when it comes down to safe biking in the city.
Let me ask, since there have been some articles of people who've gone out on rides with you, and can you just paint us a little picture of Eric Adams, the city cyclist? Where do you go? Do you commute to work sometimes? And if you're not commuting, if you're just riding for fun, where do you go? What kind of bike riding? What kind of bike riding do you do? And how do you see the city then from the saddle of your bike?
What I do all the time, because I like to use biking as a way of meeting my constituents. So I have my little borough president, Eric Adams, letters on the back of my shirt so people can feel comfortable enough to stop me and speak with me. I was part of, as a cop, I used to be part of the rage where we used to meet up in the thousands in Manhattan and just ride throughout the city. But now I go to Prospect Park often. I ride to the office many times. And when I'm just stressed out in the day, if something bad happened or some incident, I would just ride along the Coney Island, the ride from downtown through Bay Ridge going into Coney Island. I love the Greenway that we help put money into to ride into the Williamsburg area and Brooklyn Bridge Park all the time. One of my favorite rides is riding over the Manhattan Bridge and just, interacting with the tourists. So you can see me just about anywhere throughout the city riding. To me, it's therapy. It's the way I just really release a lot of stress.
That sounds great. I mean, it sounds pretty familiar too. So, I have kind of our Rorschach test for you guys here on my background. These are fairly new protected bike lanes that have gone in the last few years. What do you think about the quality of our, cycling environment, since you're out there seeing it? And, you see the good, the Greenways, and you see probably the not so good, like these are supposed to be protected bike lanes, but they're not really.
No, no, it's not, but you really should commend yourselves, TA and others. We have traveled a long way in several areas. Number one, you put this conversation into the dialogue of many of the candidates, even Carlos Machaca, who often rides a lot, and we ride sometimes when we do back to work. But you also expanded it outside the known entities. I ride and participate with several African-American biking groups. We've changed this dialogue. Both Cove and Grantham over at the Bed-Stuy Restoration Plaza. We did a serious ride in that area. You have Black girls who ride, also the brown bike girl who rides. So you're seeing an expansion of the conversation. And now we must expand that conversation, not only in dialogue, but actually building out the infrastructure. We're not seeing the infrastructure we need, but I believe we're in the right place and we're moving in the right direction. And you're going to see some real quality initiatives in the upcoming future.
So what does that look like next year in Eric Adams' administration? You know, in terms of how do we get all these cars and trucks out of the bike lanes, and how do we get more bike lanes into more of the city, as you're talking about? And I agree with you. I think we're in a really good place where we're getting leadership from leaders of color on these very issues. Yourself, probably one of the early ones, but you know, in the council, in neighborhoods, in the legislature, we're seeing it, and I think we have a big opportunity there. So, how does the Adams administration grab that opportunity?
Three things we must do. And everyone must catch up with it. Number one, you hear a lot of complaints about police vehicles parked in bike lanes or trucks or office vehicles parked in bike lanes. Each office has a inspector general, and each precinct has a integrity control officer. What we need to do is police and monitor on the agency level, and have one standard number. The number of an integrity control officer should be publicized, and that integrity control officer should be judged through the CompStat process of how well they are policing around their precinct, or any patrol car or any unmarked car that belongs to a certain precinct, so they could be a corrective action is taken immediately. And that's same for all of our agencies, particularly in the downtown area. We can use the Inspector General of all the agencies to do the immediate enforcement and make sure that things are properly addressed. Second, we need to really handle those trucks that are not on truck routes, which is a real problem, particularly in places like Sunset Park, Park Slope, Brownsville, and other areas. We need the police to be held accountable for real enforcement, because if you send the right message, you will see that you'll get a change in behavior. Right now, it's almost the Wild Wild West, where trucks are basically able to drive up and down routes that are all outside of the truck routes, which is a big mistake. We know we need trucks in the city right now to deliver goods and services, but it could be done along the appropriate truck routes. And right now, we're not seeing the proper enforcement to send the right message that is going to be done.
You see your agencies working together more than they do. We right now we see, like even parts of DOT, when they're, say, resurfacing streets, don't even acknowledge that the street may be a protected bike lane. But we don't have sanitation vehicles that are the right size for sweeping and plowing bike lanes. We don't have, you mentioned the police parking in them. We have like a film office putting all these trailers in the bike lanes. I mean, it seems like someone needs to really give some marching orders to the whole city government that we care about these things. It's not just one part of DOT, but everyone has to make these things. Everyone has a role in making these things work. Can we look forward to that in your mayoralty?
And what's interesting? It's about understanding the inner dynamics of the city that is going to allow us to get the results that we are looking for. And I am blessed by those 22 years of being a police officer, I understand that our city is divided by precincts. And right now, we're not holding our routine officers in their sectors to make sure and judge them by how well they're doing their job based on making sure no one is parked in the bike lane, making sure that no one is obstructing the bike lane. If you just localize and hold our integrity control officers, precinct commanders, during the review process known as CompStat, you can actually change that dynamic instantly. Because now you hold the sector officers, the officers who are assigned to a particular geographical boundary in a precinct, they are held accountable of making sure their bike lanes are clear, unobstructed, and that no way people are doing something that's endangering the public that use those bike lanes, parking in the bike lanes, driving through bike lanes. That is where you want to handle it, and it would change the culture that people have been used to for a long time. You and I both know behaviors must change, and you do that by doing it on a local level, and you can change it instantly. You will see a difference in a one-year period with the proper enforcement and message that is coming from the top.
How will you, that's really interesting stuff. And it sounds like you'll be managing that stuff, in a way that we're not seeing at all right now, which is interesting. How will you talk about this to the public? I mean, right now, we have this kind of, mile by mile, block by block trench warfare with the community boards. And I think you live in Bedford-Stuyvesant, right? I think DOT is right now scared silly of Community Board 3 in Brooklyn, and they haven't gone down there for years with anything bike related. Certainly not protected bike lanes, because they gotten beat up there so much in the past. So what do we do? We're going to let community boards keep saying no? I mean, it is a transportation network, right? You got to connect things.
And here's where, I love this term. It's called credible messenger. And you want people who have, what my son would say, street credibility, to go in and meet people where they are. Look what we did on Classen Avenue. Remember that bike lane?
Oh, yeah.
It was a big battle, but we were able to go in and engage in a real conversation. And you look at Robbie Cornegie, who bikes a lot as well. We need to use the Colvin Granum over at the Best Star Restoration Plaza. We need to go in and have a real on-the-ground education, and particularly a youth movement, and let the young people in that area, if we start out showing the health benefits that our children in that area are dealing with, childhood obesity and other healthcare crises, we start showing people the benefits of it. Here's is the problem we're having now, rightfully, wrongfully. People connect bike lanes with gentrification, and bike lanes have received a bad rap because people believe it's an indicator that they are going to be displaced, and it's not something that's part of the overall build out of their community. Let's change that dialogue. Let's, number one, separate the arguments. And second, have those credible messengers from the clergy groups. Like we held an event at Borough Hall with Families of Safe Street to engage our pastors. It was a clergy meeting to engage our pastors on safe biking, safe streets. We need to bring in the credible messengers of these communities and engage them in what are the benefits of safe biking, and have clergy rides. Have rides with groups and organizations, the BIDs, the local civil groups. Let's get principals engaged. Let's get some of the young people from the school engaged, because that's where the real change come about. It comes from the ground up. And I think that is how we're going to change this entire conversation.
The council passed just before the pandemic, in fall of 2019, the law for the street master plan. Do you think that, would you use that as kind of a forum or a way to sort of create the space for those conversations? I mean, it has some targets for numbers of bike lanes and things like that, but I think it's also, it's intended as a way to try to break the deadlock in some of this community board level stuff, so that everything gets out on the table and you see what the vision is, rather than, DOT coming in saying, we have a proposal, which just gives people the idea that they can say, no, it's a bad proposal.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think it is a starting place. And I believe there are places we can go even further. But it does have a real conversation where people can see the planning process and engage them in the planning process. And I've communicated with community board members from from other community boards throughout this city. And I'm telling you that at the heart of their concerns, they feel, Eric, no one is talking to us. People are talking at us. Let's engage in real conversations, those small round tables, those small meet and greets, like what we do with Breaking Bread, Building Bonds, having different groups come in together and just, share their thoughts. You can get a different level of energy, I believe, if you use those proper planning mechanisms to build out, how do we build out a biking system in New York?
Thank you. That's really interesting. You mentioned when you were talking about riding around the borough or the city, you mentioned the Greenways and the some of the sections where we actually have bike paths that we're building. But today the Greenway sort of system, which isn't a system, is one of those Frankenstein monsters of city government that has like EDC owns some of the waterfronts. DOT does some sections, but DDC builds them. Parks Department has some stuff, and somehow eventually it gets out of their capital program and gets built. And then you have like the one-off agencies like the Hudson River Park Trust. So it's very hard to get a sense of a policy or a plan around that with all that alphabet soup. In the Adams administration, can we look forward to a policy and a plan that brings those together so that we know we're going to get, some progress each year, and we're going to see a project that's not going to take 15 years like Flushing Avenue. That kind of stuff. Like, if you build it in real infrastructure, you don't get these pictures that I have behind me, and you have places where kids can go. And I think that's the kind of selling point we need to make. And it's what we see from some of the protected bike lanes, but not all the protected bike lanes. And, maybe there's some federal money coming down that we could use for that with stimulus, transportation bill, maybe congressional earmarks coming back. What's your thought about Greenways? Is that something that would be part of your work on this? And can we do better?
Without a doubt, and I'm sure just about every candidate. I mean, you come in front of TA, no candidate is going to say no. I mean, that's just the reality.
Oh, right, but will they do it, and can they do it?
right. But even more so, we need to look at the depth of one's advocacy and participation. So yes, of course, to answer your question, yes, but at the same time, this is my life. Once I'm finished government, this is how I find my therapy. I ride to a park to meditate. I go to the park and ride to a location to read my book, to download, to engage in those tough conversations with my son. This is my life. This is not what I'm doing because it's politically correct or sound. This is what I have been doing long before entering government. But you said something that is crucial to me as I continue to share my mission and message to New Yorkers. Our city can't continue to be dysfunctional where agencies operate in silos and we don't have a clarity of mission. And so you can't have DOT pushing one level of biking in the city, yet you have the movie unit having structures blocking bike lanes, or you have the police department not enforcing the rules. We have to be all on the same page with the city's mission and message and execution of that mission. And that's what I'm going to do. This disjointedness of having different agencies controlling parts of the Greenway, unsure what they want to do with it, the challenges of navigating government, it should not be that hard. And then we need to gauge what we're doing, because what gets measured gets it done. We need a real plan showing in real time how we're building out our bike lanes, how we're building out our protected bike lanes. We need a continuous inspection of what progress we're making month by month, year by year.
You've, in that vein, about sort of fully separate bike lanes. You've written a policy point about finding places to put what you call bicycle superhighways. Can you elaborate on that a bit? What are you thinking there?
Yeah, well, you have a lot of places and locations. Let's look under the BQE, going into the Red Hook section. There are many overhead structures where we can build pathways. You can take all the way from downtown Brooklyn on Park Avenue, all the way into the beginning of Bedford-Stuyvesant, many under the FDR Drive and other areas of the city where you have overhead highways and overhead structures that we can turn it into a real superhighways where people can have predominantly bike rides without any form of needing to deal with traffic or needing to deal with any form of denial of the biker to continue to move forward.
Yeah, no, I got it. I've always thought that space on Atlantic under the LIRR was a huge waste. A lot of it's just crosshatched. Some
Yes.
of it's parking, but come on, like how often can you put together like a couple miles of something like that, especially on a street that's tough to be on otherwise, right?
Yes, yes.
And there's a movement down another part of the BQE, not far from here, the Meeker Avenue under the BQE in Williamsburg, where people want to do that. And again, DOT is just using it for parking.
Look at Sunset Park under on 3rd Avenue. You have
which has been
that goes
terrible.
all the way into Bay Ridge. And you're right, Atlantic Avenue, that stretch goes all the way at the beginning of East New York. So those could be real ways that we could find unused space, such as those road space under elevated highways and railways that can become bicycle superhighways.
So let me ask one other thing. You and I were both at the launch at Atlantic Terminal for the Unipod bike parking, secure bike parking facility there. That company, it's a Brooklyn-based startup. It's had a really hard time working with city DOT to the point where it's actually doing better in Jersey City with the Port Authority than with city government. Would you help them sort of achieve their mission and get out of their way, or is that outdoor advertising still like an issue for you in terms of putting them in plazas or other DOT spaces?
Well, first of all, it's a real win. The gentleman came to me and said, Eric, we need some help. Can you help us navigate it? Government, it should not be that difficult. The antiquated thinking about many people in city agencies, I call them the permanent government of city agencies that are pushing their agenda and not the agenda of the people of the city. That must be dismantled with a clear message from the top. We need more places that you can secure and lock up your bikes. I don't know if you were ever inside the place. It's amazing. I love it. It should be throughout this entire city, and we should expand it.
Yeah, I mean, it's made to be a networked thing, not just a one-off.
Yes, lovely idea. Just as when you look at bike share, we need to expand the use and accessibility that is associated with these programs throughout our entire city and go into those non-traditional areas. There's no reason we can't have that similar structure down on Pitkin Avenue, down on Rockaway Avenue, in South Jamaica, Queens. It would encourage people, particularly in two fare zones, to ride to their bikes to the train, the subway station, and get off and use the subway station in the correct way, or ride all the way to their place of employment. So it's a real win for me. Fantastic,
thank you. We just have a couple minutes left. Anything else you want to underline here as a bike rider, as a policymaker?
Well, number one, I believe that one of the biggest, I think, the biggest challenge that we have in our city is that we exist in silos. Biking is a way for us to creatively learn about our neighbors. We should organize bike rides. We should have more street closures where people can just cross-pollinate, I like to call it, and do joint rides together, particularly around our young people. There could be no greater initiative than put in place a safe passage to and from schools, particularly during those hours while children commute to and from, and utilize a safe biking mechanism to do so. And I think that for those who are out there listening to these talks and conversation, and I really enjoy the way you're engaging in the conversation here, I will encourage people right where you are. Organize a bike ride on your block. Introduce yourself to a neighbor. There's a great shop on Fulton Street where they give out free bikes that they, repair and create. We need more of them. I think the program at Shirley Chisholm's Park is an amazing program where I think Bloomberg's dollars went into startup. We need to recycle bikes. We need to get a bike in everyone's hand that desires one, if they could afford one, or if the city is providing one. If we want to turn this city into a biking culture, it means including all New Yorkers, and we can all play a part with it.
I love to hear it. There are all over the world, people are talking about how can we subsidize e-bike purchases, give people a little longer distance, get them to work without a car, get them to transit, those kinds of things. So, we really look forward to, engaging with you further on all these issues, and really appreciate your time. We'll see you out on the road.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Eric Adams, Borough President of Brooklyn and candidate for mayor.